Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Excalibur Special Edition, otherwise known as The Sword is Drawn, from December 1987. So this comes in the wake of the apparent death of the X-Men telecast to the world from Dallas, Texas in Uncanny X-Men number 227 at the end of Fall of the Mutants. And this features a new X-team, the coming together of a new X-team, with Rachel Phoenix returning from Mojo world, Nightcrawler recovered from his injuries sustained during Mutant Massacre, the same with Kitty Pryde, and we've got Captain Britain and Megan joining them for the core of this new X-team, Excalibur. So this is how the team gets together, this is their origin story, so to speak, and they're all under the belief that the X-Men are dead. Something to note before I open the book is that this is a prestige format square bound comic book, so a little bit more expensive. Something else to note is that the colors in this issue and on the cover are by long-term X-Men colorist Glynis Oliver, but what's most interesting here is it's not the older color separation technique that's being used, rather it is a European technique of blue line art that is colored by Glynis Oliver, hand colored, and then an acetate with the black line overlaid, and that's photographed at the printers, and that's what you get. So you get to see this more subtle hand colored palette from Glynis Oliver in this issue. So I'm going to open this one up to the credits page, and a little issue I'll have going through this book is its square bound nature. I'm not going to be able to turn all the pages exactly as I'd like, because of the way that this book is put together. But the title of the story there, The Sword is Drawn, creative team, writer Chris Claremont, penciler Alan Davis. And if you go to Alan Davis's website, you will see he's got the first few pages of Claremont's script available at his website for this. And you can see that Claremont basically gave him a type of Marvel method plot where there's a lot of description of what's going on this first page, the next couple of pages as well, in terms of what's the layout of Kitty's bedroom and so on and so forth. But he's leaving it up to Alan Davis to decide how many panels he's going to take, how he's going to lay out the main action beats of the story. Inker Paul Neary, with special thanks to Mark Farmer for assistance, letterer Tom Orzechowski, and colorist Glynis Oliver. So we also have a little note there created by Chris Claremont and Alan Davis. So the story begins in Kitty's bedroom. This is in Muir Isle, and she is unable to sleep. And remember, this is in the aftermath of Mutant Massacre, and that's why she's on Muir Isle. She's trying to recover from injuries sustained in that storyline where she was unable to make herself solid. So toss, turn, fidget to and fro, tick-tock the clock, time drags slower by the minute through a night that lasts forever. All she wants is sleep. So much, too much to ask, a small slice of oblivion to take the hurt away, but because she hurts, thoughts racing, images replaying, etching themselves, those final awful moments, how she hates them into her mind's eye. She can't, she'd cry if she had any tears left. So classic Chris Claremont prose here. And interesting to see the foreshadowing in the background with the poster on her wall at the head of her bed, the once and future king, and Excalibur there superimposed over a castle in the background. And then we're into the story. And what is it? Is it a dream, a nightmare, an hallucination? Wakey, wakey, rise and shine, dear, up and at him. And she gets powdered here on her face. She's pulled out of the bed. She's got autographs for fans, and she's handed here a stack of Uncanny X-Men Annual 10, the one that was drawn by Art Adams. But the reason that is featured is because that's the last time that we saw Mojo interfering with the X-Men's lives. So here's your costume. She's pushed out this door, cut it out, Lego, hey, harsh words, fouler thoughts, rage, a welcome anodyne for grief. Her grief at the death of the X-Men, all vanishing the instant she's thrust on stage. And what does she see? So a great double page spread here by the team. And we've got our title, Excalibur. To wonder if she's lost her mind. Time is money, people, says the X-Director, Professor X. And we've got the X-Men apparently alive here. And we've got Colossus here playing cards and smoking a cigar. We've got Havoc trying to learn his lines. We've got Longshot and Dazzler canoodling. We've got Wolverine here comically getting his nails done as he's reading a book on Japanese flower arranging. Pretty fun stuff here in this issue, but notice the branding on the film production machinery, Mojo's New World Picks. So let's continue with the story. So she's relieved and crying. The X-Men, they're alive, and she thinks, I knew it. Couldn't be true. Had to be a mistake, that they'd find a way to beat the Reaper. And that phrase, to beat the Reaper, repeats a number of times throughout this story. But what's with the movie studio, Kitty thinks. Professor Xavier's our teacher, the man who founded the team. Why is he playing director? And so she turns to ask Psylocke, Psylocke, since when did the X-Men decide to go to Hollywood? And then she sees Psylocke horrifically doesn't have any eyes. And she says, we're magic people, Kitty. Where else would we belong but a magic town? Hold still, Miss Braddock, says one of the costume people. This'll only take a sec. How's that? And she's got new eyes, perfect. And those eyes are telecasting Kitty's picture and sound to the computer screen there, the monitor. Camera is fully functional. And this, of course, is a nod to the fact that Psylocke lost her eyes, but also had them replaced in New Mutants Annual number 2 by Mojo. But this is not something that Kitty knows. So this is an interesting sequence she's involved in. And then in her surprise, she falls backwards on top of Rogue, and Rogue is upset about being fallen on, and also Kitty herself is surprised that they're touching flesh, but her powers aren't being absorbed. And Rogue explains, give me a break, will you? None of that stuff, guff, works till the director gives the word. What are you talking about? Kitty asks. And then Storm says, dear girl, you're supposed to be a professional. The least you can do is act the part. Part? Storm? I'm not acting, I'm me. Why are the rest of you so different? Perhaps because we know the difference between roles and reality, says Storm. And then the ex-director calls action. So they're in their costumes suddenly. Everyone's back to normal, Kitty thinks, and even she's able to phase. And she says here, and look at me, I can phase. This is sick. How could I dream something so cruel? Why can't I break out of it? And then in the foreground, we have these red heels. And this person says, you forget, dreams are sometimes windows to other realities. And that is definitely a theme that Claremont plays with in his various books in this era of his work at Marvel. And who does this speaker turn out to be except Rachel, in a new costume of her own, which is a variation on her Hound costume. And Kitty's surprised, Rachel, I don't understand. This has to be a dream, only it feels so real. And the X-Men, more puppets than people, travesties of the heroes I remember. So Rachel explains, when the reality no longer exists, exploiters can take the legend and make it whatever they want, good or bad. And that is a speech of Rachel's that will get remembered and repeated by Kitty towards the end of this special edition. So the ex-director angrily says to Rachel, you're not in this production, you had your chance at stardom, Baby Phoenix, and blew it. When your teammates needed you most, you ran out on them. And that was in X-Men, Uncanny X-Men number 209. And Rachel says, my mistake, my shame, but now I have a chance to make amends. But then she's covered in chains and she's captured here by the Ersatz X-Men. And Kitty helps her by helping her phase through the chains. And Rachel says, bless you, Kitty, be seeing you maybe sooner than you think. And the ex-director says, that young lady was very naughty. Sure seemed like a great idea at the time, Kitty says. And I'm sure you know what happens to naughty little girls. And here we go. So the X-Men have been these werewolves all along, wearing their skins, so to speak. So Kitty tries to phase through the wall, but she's solid again and she can't phase, can't escape. The X-Men, all monsters. No, keep away. No, don't. Please, no. So what's going to happen next? Well, turn the page, and she wakes up and she's back in her bedroom, but confused. And so she phases through the wall and out of the house to the beach. And what does she see? It's morning time, it's dawn, and she sees in the sunrise the Phoenix effect. And then she thinks, now, what the heck does that mean? Freaky after image of a very freaky dream, or harbinger of something worse? Rachel disappeared months ago. Haven't even thought of her in ages. Feel pretty lousy about that. Feel lousier about my dream. Am I really so perverso inside as to imagine my dearest friends as slaves of one of the team's most disgusting foes, Mojo? Am I so angry, resentful that they're gone, or is it because I got left behind? And then Lockheed is there, and she goes to give him a little scratch and between his shoulders, but her hand phases right through him, and then she thinks, I'm not normal anymore. Even for an X-Man, my normal state is to be phased, as physically intangible as a ghost. To become solid, I have to concentrate hard as I can. Hooray! But it won't last long. What a mess. Oh golly, I remember I fell asleep with these pictures in my arms. Me and Professor Xavier when I just joined the school, and a team shot. And this team shot here must have been taken around Uncanny X-Men 200, because that is the makeup of the team. Rachel with her Phoenix costume as well, and Cyclops before he exited in 201. Right before everything fell apart, Kitty says, now he's gone away across the universe. Uncanny X-Men 201, probably never to return, and the X-Men are dead. So great combination of art and colour and the lettering as well by Orzechowski on these pages. Like a great team working really well together. A wonderful rendition of the Phoenix effect here as well for the dawn sun rising up from the sea. And then the scene switches to the Celtic Sea, says Chris Claremont's narration, but we know it better here in Ireland as the Irish Sea. Off the west coast of England, she'd been swimming alone when the pod popped up and asked her to play. The dolphin's natural exuberance was too infectious to be denied. She knew next to nothing of the sea, so they delighted in teaching her its wonders and mysteries. She was having so much fun, she lost all track of time until, and she sees the Phoenix effect too. And that's interesting because it confirms it's not an after image from Kitty's nightmare dream hallucination. It's something out there in reality. And Megan says, a bird of fire heralding the sunrise. How beautiful. But have I been away so long? Farewell, thin friends. I like the way that Claremont gives her a very particular idiosyncratic way of phrasing things. And Megan's an interesting character. She has a very kind of like hopeful, optimistic, childlike attitude to the world. And she flies home to the lighthouse where she and Captain Britain are living. And the narrative caption says her name is Megan, and she's as much a creature of the earth as of man. In olden days, she'd be called one of the fairy folk, although actually she's a mutant. So she's home to Brian Braddock, but she sees a mess here in their sitting room with the TV on and giving a report about the latest news from America. The mutant super team known as the X-Men has been slain in Dallas, Texas. Among the fatalities, an English mutant known by the code identity Psylocke. So Megan understands now why the room is a mess and why these pictures of Brian and his twin, Betsy, are strewn around the floor. And also a nice little team shot there from Psylocke to Brian. Psylocke joins the X-Men big brother. Wish me luck. So pretty cool. And Megan flies down to a room that seems to be down in the basement of the lighthouse, and she finds Brian there, a drunken mess, going through bottles of whiskey, it seems. And he says to her, look at me, Captain Britain, some hero, couldn't even save my own sister. Now there's a bit of a smudge there in the colour work on his chin. And here, Megan reasonably enough says, Betsy and the X-Men were half a world away. How could you have possibly known she was in danger? That's the point, he says to her, because what the blazes use am I if I don't know such things? Brian, says Megan, she was a grown woman. She chose her life. She's responsible for her decisions and her deeds. You're not to blame. but he's in a rage. The devil, you say, changeling cow, what do you know about anything? You never had family, never lost anyone you cared for. Go away, Megan. I don't want your sympathy. I only want to be left alone. So this is quite a emotionally fraught scene between the two. Obviously, he's in a drunken rage there, and he is overwhelmed by his grief at his twin sister's death. And so Megan retreats to the bedroom and she says, I'm sorry, Brian, I didn't mean to make you cross. I'm always saying the wrong thing and doing worse. But it isn't true what you said. I do care. I do understand. Betsy was gentle and kind to me. She was your sister, but my friend. I miss her too. Maybe, though, it's you who don't care anymore about me. Have I been fooling myself all these months thinking you loved me? I couldn't bear that hurt. I'd rather be dead. And look at the way when she is in this fetal position on the bed, she reverts to her natural state, which is this less conventionally beautiful face and body. And then she snaps back and she says, stop it, silly girl. He's lashing out because he's in pain, same as you used to be. He got you past that awful time. Now it's your turn to return the favour. Hope this note looks right. So blessed hard to put speaky words on paper. So Megan hasn't been to school. She hasn't learned to read and write. This is really funny to see her crouched here, hunkered on the writing desk. And this is her note. Megan, go, X house with a cat, a little kitty and a love heart from the lighthouse to here. So she says, but I can't face him, not while he's in such a state, not till I know what to do. Can't manage on my own either. Only one place to go for the proper advice as she flies out of the lighthouse. And where could that be? Well, Muir Isle. And we pick up in the gymnasium with fun and games with Nightcrawler. Have a thee fell recreance. So as he's taking on these robotic musketeers, and he's enjoying himself until he's cut by one of them, and he instinctively teleports Bamf to another part of this danger room and thinks to himself, dumb, so dumb, teleported instinctively when I got hit. Bad move, feel so weak. Like all I want to do is lie down and die. May get my wish. So he's at the emergency switch off button, the control panel, and what happens? The system short circuits because Kitty phases right through the wall. Nightcrawler, oh crumbs. And then the robots all fall to the ground. The program switched off and he's delighted at the save. You okay, Nightcrawler? Yeah. Thanks to your timely intervention. Great then. You mind telling me what the heck you think you were playing at here? And he says, testing myself as the sweat cascades down his brow. Now, this is the point that I want to bring something to your attention, which is if you take a close look at the art on this page, and in particular the color and the alignment of the color, with the blackline art, it's out of kilter. Now this goes back to what I said at the beginning of the video when I was talking over the cover about this European technique that started to be used in the 80s by the American publishers. So it was used by Lynn Varley and Frank Miller for the painted color of Dark Knight Returns. It was used also by Richmond Lewis and David Mazzucchelli when Richmond Lewis repainted or recolored Batman Year One for the first collected edition of that story that came out in 1987. And this is the technique that Glynis Oliver is using. Remember, what happens is the blackline art is printed on a page in non-reproduction blue, and then the colorist colors directly onto that, and then the blackline art is scanned onto or printed onto an acetate that is laid down over the color art. And what's happened here is at the printers, the sheet of acetate has shifted and it reveals the blue line underneath and the colors are out of alignment with the black line art. And I'm going to show you the same page in this the Excalibur, the Sword is Drawn collection, Excalibur Classics. You can see the same page here. The color's a little richer in this reprinting, but see that panel? See how sharp and aligned the black line art is and the colour beneath it. So the sword is drawn, had two printings, December 1987 and about 5 months later in 1988. And the second printing corrected the alignment of the colour and black line art. But in my first printing from December 1987, they're out of whack. So just look at that panel. I'm going to remove the trade paperback and look at it here. And you can see the blurring. And that gets worse as I go through this particular issue. But anyway, it is what it is. So Nightcrawler there is saying he was testing himself, and Kitty says to him, a full bore combat exercise with the safety interlocks disconnected so soon after your release from Moira's hospital? Are you crazy? Lucky for you, the backup alarm sounded in the house the minute you started. I had to learn, Kitty, if I'd lost my edge, he says. And she says to him, you figure on this being the perfect way to catch up to the X-Men having just died? And he says, you no right to say such things. You haven't got the right to give me calls. So the two bickering here, but really it's all down to their grief over the loss of their former teammates. But outside they learned something strange. Nightcrawler had a strange dream, and it is the exact same dream that Kitty had, as it turns out. He explains to her here, lovely background art for the little mountain on Muir Isle. I'd never had the like. When it was done, I felt ashamed, almost physically ill. I was in a movie studio with twisted, decadent versions of the X-Men as the cast, and her, Professor Xavier, our director. And Rachel was there too. Some kind of prisoner, and you helped her escape, says Kitty. Yeah, only I was left behind to behold the X-Men's transformation into monsters. The prof called them werewolves. You also then. Pretty weird, huh? If we both had the same experience, maybe it wasn't really a dream. Ray's a telepath, Kitty says. Maybe she was trying to send us a message. Question is, why now, after staying out of touch for so long, and what's it all mean? And great top-down shot of this cottage where the two are living. There's the facility, research facility, and here's where they're living. Well, it's a bit more than a cottage, really, this house where they're living, and that is Moira's house on Muir Isle. And Nightcrawler says, probably some new and transcendent disaster. And that word transcendent runs throughout the text as well. It's used 3 times. It's one of these keywords, along with beating the Reaper as a phrase. That isn't funny, says Kitty. Shouldn't we do something about it? The pair of us, crippled as we are, just because we've been hurt doesn't mean we stop being X-Men. So that is a theme also of this particular story, you know, that the X-Men may be dead, but long live the X-Men, the ones who remain. And Professor X's dream too. There's a knock at the door. Crumbs the door, says Kitty. Duck out of sight, Kurt, while I see who it is. Big cast shadow here. And nice to see also the rendering of the grain of the wood of the door. Great attention to detail by Alan Davis and Neary, with that assistance by Mark Farmer. So here's Nightcrawler hiding behind the door. And who is it? Well, it's someone from Captain Britain's stories. It is the Technet, and this one, and well, we'll go through it. So, salutation, small and youthful sentience, and she's got this lizard creature on her shoulder. 2 paraforms present, mother, none others close enough to interfere. And she says, I grow weary of endlessly repeating myself, as she kind of like smashes the lintel and jams of the door on her way in because of her huge size. And she says, I grow weary of repeating endlessly myself, lizard. Don't call me mother. Yes, mother. Sigh. If you weren't so infernally useful. And then she introduces herself. I am Gatecrasher. Would you please inform the master or mistress of this domicile of my presence? And Kitty there, would you mind taking your hand out of my face? So, Kitty phasing. You terrestrial paraforms come in such stimulatingly spirited variety. It never fails to amaze. Look, Gatecrasher, I hate to disappoint you, but Dr. MacTaggart, this is her house in her island. She's away right now. If you'd care to leave a number or address, Regrettably, dear girl, time oppresses and delays cannot be countenanced. Mother intruder imminently arriving. So Megan has finally completed her flight from the lighthouse to Muir Isle, and she recognizes Gatecrasher, of course. You, the hippopotamus. It's hilarious. And Nightcrawler, or maybe it's Kitty here with the tail of the balloon, says, you guys know each other? Spectacular. Salutations, Swanling. You appear as formidably lovely as ever. Whatever you're after, you'd better leave Brian alone. And Gatecrasher says, you rest assured, I've absolutely no interest in your dear captain. So why are you here? Asks Kitty. I need to talk with you. Kitty, it's important. And Gatecrasher says, actually, dearling, I believe she was addressing me. So now we get the reason. This psych calm crystal should make everything plain as starlight. And another character from Captain Britain's mythos. I am Opal Luna Saturnyne, omniversal magistrix, responsible for the maintenance of order and reality in this sector of creation. So Nightcrawler's fascinated. Unglaublich, he says. The witch. I never understood what Brian saw in her because they have a history between them. And boy, I can, says Kitty. Darn it. So let's continue. And by the way, Opal Luna Saturnyne works herself for Roma, who had appeared in Uncanny X-Men 227 and was the agent of the X-Men's return from death, and also the spell she casts on them whereby they are undetectable by any means of technology. So Cerebro is unable to detect them, and Nightcrawler uses a portable version of Cerebro later in this issue. But Excalibur are never going to be able to see the X-Men under Roma's spell because of the spell. So then, Opal Luna explains, Gatecrasher's Technet are my duly authorized agents responsible for the apprehension of this threat to reality, Phoenix. So pretty cool image of the Phoenix effect, and then of Rachel in full Phoenix mode, who is believed to be en route to Sol 3, the planet Earth. I hereby charge and require that the inhabitants thereof, as a sentient species, offer all appropriate assistance in this endeavour. So that's it. That's what she wants. What she want with Rachel? And Gatecrasher says, dear girl, Saturnyne neglected to take us into her confidence, and to be honest, one simply doesn't subject the omniversal magistrix to that sort of examination. So Kitty isn't prepared to cooperate, and basically Gatecrasher summons the rest of her team, Technet. So here they all are. And we are going to learn their names throughout the story. So this guy here is the teleporter. He's the one who's brought them into Moira's house. And then what happens is Kitty and the rest begin to fight off the Technet, but they're easily taken care of. First of all, by Scatterbrain, Scatterbrain here takes out Kitty. Nice DeLuca effect as she falls over straight on her nose. And then this gruesome creature, Body Bag, covers Megan with some kind of transparent membrane as she thinks she's coated all over. Her powers won't work, and then she's sucked up into his maw and pops out of his back. Again, great illustration by Alan Davis here, and an imagination as well from Claremont and Davis. And then Gatecrasher goes to grab Nightcrawler, but of course he teleports away. Disappeared he did, Gatecrasher, says this one Pharaoh. We learn his name is Pharaoh later. Teleporter, she concludes. So she says, gather up the phaser, Body Bag. And so Kitty is sucked up into Body Bag the same way Megan was. We'll keep the girls as bargaining chips and we'll be on our merry way, because their main target is Rachel. And here we go. Rachel Summers falling, cast out, fleeing from heaven, Hades, never sure which, all the same to her, screaming, cheering, crying, with joy and terror combined, as all the component elements of her being are shattered, spread beyond reality, beyond conception, to the farthest reaches of creation, where space has no meaning and time even less. For that infinite moment, she is all. A moment later, sort of nothing, as transcendence gives way to reality. And I like the little sound effect here. Blink and you'll miss it. Poit, as she pops out. And where has she popped? But straight onto a birthday cake or a party cake. And it looks like she's still in a mad dream with the Mad Hatter and this giant-sized rat and this devil lady and snake and all the rest of it. But also, if we continue, something's odd and something's up, and the crowd around her. I love this technique of Claremont's where everybody gets a phrase but not linked to them specifically. Who's she? How should I know? Appeared in midair, flash of light, sprayed gunk all over the place, covered in it. My gown's ruined, no great loss, what a looker, cute costume, too rough trade, young tearaway, ought to be ashamed. So she thinks it's lunacy, and she's caught with these change that we saw her in Kitty's nightmare dream hallucination, and she thinks disoriented, too many thoughts, can't sort them out. This is a stage set. Could it be that I haven't escaped at all? Was the pain for nothing? Am I back where I started? So she thinks she's still on Mojo World. And that is where she was tempted to go by Spiral at the end of Uncanny X-Men 209. But we never saw what happened with her in Mojo World. This is her first appearance since that issue. And there was a graphic novel planned that was to have been produced by Chris Claremont and Rick Leonardi. And Leonardi did produce some pages. It was Phoenix's adventures in the Mojoverse, but it was never completed. It was abandoned. So we don't have that bridging series to tell us what she was up to in Mojo World. We just have her disappearance, taking Spiral's hand and invitation at the end of 209 and popping out here into our world. So she's caught by the chains in a rerun of Kitty's Dream here, but she is using her TK to pull away from them, and suddenly, boom, there ports into the scene on this one-page splash, the wolves from Kitty's Dream. Okay, so this special edition is 48 pages long. There's no ads, as you can see. So at this point, I'm going to end this first part of my review and commentary on The Sword is Drawn. So do check back to the channel for part 2 tomorrow. And in the meantime, if you enjoyed this video, please like it in YouTube. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.